Okay, so
Hello.
on the last, okay, so this next lesson is nothing new. It basically summarizes all the different methods that we've solved system of equations. Okay? So what was the very first method we learned?
Graphing.
We learned graphing. So this is when we want to estimate the solution. Sometimes we don't actually know. Like we look to see where they intersect, right? So here's an example. Y equals x plus 2 and y equals negative x plus 4. So what would that look like when we graph it?
If you go up x. If you go up, you go to 2, then you go up 1 to the side 1.
Okay, so here's 2. We go up 1 over 1. So here's our first line.
Then you go
And then what's the other line?
4, and
To
you
4?
go down 1 to the side.
Okay.
Oh, Jesus.
And do they intersect? Yeah, so these have one solution. Can you see where they intersect?
What? What is it? After 5 years. Show me.
Okay, great. So what point do they intersect?
When your dad gave it to you.
1, comma 3.
Guys, numbers are really good at
Next one.
Yeah.
Ladies,
Substitution.
focus. When would we use substitution?
If one of the variables is in either equation and the coefficient of 1 or -1.
Right, and usually I also think of this as when you have an isolated variable.
Sawyer.
Do I need to collect your phones?
Okay, flex Sawyer's on.
So here, we're going to add 3y. And then we're going to take this and we're going to substitute it into the other equation. So it's like this, 2 times 3y plus 1 plus 5y equals 13.
No, I'm serious. Like all of them.
No, it has all the different methods and when to use which one. So the first one is when you want to just, like graphing is usually not the best way to find a solution. That's when you just want to graph it real quick and find it out, like
Or if
an
it tells you to
estimate.
graph.
Right, or if they tell you to graph. The second one, substitution, this is when we use this one when it looks like an isolated variable, okay? Now go ahead and solve it. We get 6y plus 2 plus 5y equals 13. So we have 11y plus 2 equals 13. Subtract 2, we get 11y equals 11.
1 equals 1.
Right, so we get y is 1. Now we could go back into the beginning. I could go back to the x equals 3 times y plus 1. So we get 4, so our point is 4 comma 1. Sorry.
Okay, wait, I'm going to need that.
Yeah, sorry, there's not a lot of space. I tried to fit them. I wanted to fit it all on one page, but give you little boxes so you could see each method and how it was solved. Okay? So we had graphing, we had substitution. Usually students like the next one the best when you just have to add them together or subtract them and one of the variables is eliminated. So you like the graphing? So I like one. I personally like elimination because it's when they have opposite coefficients. So like for example, y and negative y, or if it had a 2y and a minus 2y, or a 3x and a negative 3x. Because all you have to do is add them together, and we get 2x equals 4, right? The y's cancel.
Wait, where's that 4 come from?
3 times 1 is 3 plus 1. I just skipped one step because it's 3 plus 1. So what do we get when we solve for x? Okay, and then how do we find the other one? Just substitute it back in. Let's see. Yay. 2 comma negative 1. Okay, that was using addition. When do we use subtraction? That's when they have this, when they have this same, well, no, not when they're,
When they're both like positive.
right, so if I have 2x and 2x, they have the same sign, so I'm going to draw the line, change the signs, and then it combines. So here we have a minus, this becomes a plus, this becomes a plus. So we get 10y equals 20. Does that make sense? What do we get for y?
2.
We get 2. Your phone, 2x plus 3 times 2 equals 6. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so on the next page, it's just to determine the best method to solve this equation to solve. Can I just do which one I want, like the one that I want?
Yeah. So that's the nice thing about this lesson. You get to pick your favorite method and solve. As long as you solve correctly, I don't care which way. So it's going to be the same on the test. On the test, there's going to be a place where you have to solve with substitution. You have, like it'll say solve by substitution, solve by elimination. But then there's going to be choose the method. So whichever way you want to solve by, you pick. All right, the last one is using multiplication. So that's when none of the variables match up. And neither can be eliminated. So if we have a 3x and a 4x and a negative 2y and a 5y, what do you think? What should we multiply
Oh, this
by?
we have to do.
I think.
By negative.
Okay, so we could do by 4
Negative 4
and negative 3, or we could multiply this by 5 and this by 2. You want to do 3 and 4? Okay. So I'm going to multiply the top one, and I'm going to multiply the bottom one. Good. I'm going to just write everything here. So it's going to be negative 12x plus 8y equals negative 4. Then we have 12x plus 15y equals 27. That's fine. You have your opposite signs?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. That's awesome. So here we get 23y equals 23, which works out nicely. So we divide by 20. So even though the numbers look a little strange when we divide, we still just get y is 1. Now, when you plug back in, I wouldn't plug back into one of these. Plug back into one of the very original equations. So we have 3x minus 2 times 1 equals 1. Oops. So 3x equals 3, and we get 1. So we get 1, 1.
It wasn't sort of orange.
Put your phone off. Okay. So that's it. That's basically the notes part. So the next part, the next page, determine the best method, to solve each system of equations. Then solve. So you pick. What would you use here?
I used it.
What did you multiply by?
No, I was dragged.
So that's fine. So if Jade,
I forgot about that.
if Jade solved by multiplication, that's
Okay,
fine.
but
It's whatever.
40 basically, and that's that.
So this one, I would use subtraction. So I'm going to change the sign, so it's going to become a plus, a minus, and a minus. So what do we end up with? Baby? 7x equals, what's 2 minus 9?
7.
Negative 7. So when I divide both sides by 7, I get x equals negative 1. And then I'll plug back into the top one, so 5 times negative 1 plus 7y equals 2. How about negative 5? She meant that. Perfect. So we get negative 1, 1. Okay, what would you use in number 2?
Multiply the next. Oh, we can just multiply the top of the negative.
Good, so this one's gonna be multiplication. How about by just 2? Because they're already opposite signs. So we get 6x minus 8y equals negative 20. Right, they're already, one's positive, one's negative already. So I wouldn't bother with the negative 2, because otherwise we have to subtract them. It would still work, it's fine. What do we get? We get 11x equals what? Good, so divide by 11. Negative 2 for x. So you guys get the idea now? It's next Sunday.
This Sunday?
I am going.
This Sunday?
So we're not going to go through the rest of them, but let me just go through, and I want you to decide if we were to go through and solve, what method would you use? So just take a look at number 3. What method would you use? Look on the previous.
No, I wouldn't. First I turned it into y equals n equals 2 if I can do that.
No.
Okay, but
No, because I want to make it add up. It is y equals n.
so when there was one that I wrote, what happens if you have the variable isolated?
Oh, you have to subtract it.
What do we call that?
No, you're fine. Y equals that, so you plug it into where the y
Oh,
is.
what's that called when you plug it in? That had a name.
Substitution.
Substitution.
What?
Because, so, oops.
You already have a y equals, so you just plug it in.
Right, I already have y isolated.
Oh,
It's one of those. So that's why I want you to just be able, listen, I know you know how to solve it now, but what method you choose will decide, if you make the problem really easy or if you make it overly difficult. So like number 4, what would you do to solve these?
It's fine.
Oh,
You just have to.
You'd,
What do we call
add,
that?
an
Add. Right? You just add them together. So we'd get 5x equals 10, and then you could continue. Remember, our goal in each and every one of these, except for graphing, is to get rid of one of the variables, like to get rid of the y. Even with substitution, I got rid of the y. What would you do for number 5? Subtract. It's same thing. It's the same idea. Subtract because they have the same sign. So this would be a minus. We'd make that into a plus and this into a plus. So we'd get 2x equals 14, and then you could continue.
That's what you add.
Oh, be careful, because they're up.
Oh, I'm lying.
This is multiplication. Why do we have to do multiplication first? Okay, so what would you multiply the top one? You want to multiply this by 3? And then we would get a negative 15x minus a 9y equals a negative 48. Here we get a positive 15x minus 25y equals a negative 20. And then you would combine these. The first one that we did here? I said subtraction because, remember, I kind of highlighted here. What did I say? When they have the same coefficient, we need to subtract. If they have opposite, meaning like if they have a 2x and a minus 2x, those are opposite. But if it was a 2x and a 2x, then I want to subtract. Subtract. Okay. All right, so page 367. Let's take a look at these. So, I'll bring up the teacher edition. I don't mind if you see the answers because there are some even ones, but just obviously you have to show your work. What was the page number again? Somebody have their notes packet in front? Riley, what's it say for homework?
367.
367.
6 to 11 all.
Barbara, if you want to do.
I think they're not.
I'm sorry, Molly. It's really Molly.
We're talking.